Hey guys, welcome back to another video. In this video, I'm going to be talking about opposition. Opposition seems to be a very difficult idea, a very difficult topic for many players. Because what's the point of opposition? You hear it all the time, but you might not understand what it's used for. Basically, opposition is to help your king become better than your opponent's king positionally. Obviously, the worth is still the same. If you lose the king, it's the whole game is done. But positionally, opposition will make your king better. You'll see what I mean in a little bit. So let's get started. Alright, so this is the basic opposition, like bare bones. It's opposition without anything else. So here is perhaps the most basic opposition, just called opposition. And opposition is when two kings are standing away from each other. It does not necessarily have to be one block away, as shown here. It could be diagonally or vertically, as many squares away. But here, basically, the reason why opposition kind of determines whose king is better is by the fact that if, let's say here, one of the king will probably have to move. So let's say the black king moves. If the black king moves, then no matter where he moves, white will be able to move up to the fourth rank. So basically, let's say black, he moves his king to, let's say, b5. White will be able to move his king to d4, and then etc. And then, of course, if black steps back to the sixth rank, then white will obviously be able to move up to fourth rank. So that's basic opposition. And you'll see why in a minute, why the king move, if the king loses the opposition, it's bad for him. Basically, that's what, let's say black has to move here. That means black loses the opposition. He won't be able to oppose the king anymore. Think of it that way. He won't be able to, oppose the white king anymore because he has to retreat. There's no way forward. And white, if he does not have to move, then he gains the opposition. This board itself is opposition, but whether who has the opposition depends on who has the move. If you have the move, then you don't have the opposition. So yeah. Next is this. So this is called distant operation. Distant opposition. So basically, how this works, you might be wondering, what? It has nothing to do with opposition, right? No, that's not true. So basically, let's say the kings move forward towards one another. That is when you realize it is related to opposition. This is just distant opposition. When you look at this board, you might be like, they are so far apart from each other that they have nothing to do with each other. But let's say black moves up to c7. Alright? Black moves up to c7. White moves up to c2. black moves to c6, white moves to c3, black moves to c5, and now it's opposition. In this case, black moved first, so he had the opposition. Basically, how you know this is look at the number of squares between the kings. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 squares. If you move when there is an even number of squares, then you have the opposition. Likewise, if you move when there's an odd number of squares, then you do not have the opposition. So as we see here, let's say black moved right now. There's 6 squares. There's an even number of squares. Black moves, he'll have the opposition when the kings get closer to each other. Now here, this is called diagonal opposition. And it's basically the same thing, same concept. It's just a different perspective. Same thing as distant opposition. Right now there's 6 squares between the kings, diagonally. There's b2, c3, d4, e5, f6, and g7. Those are the 6 squares between the kings. Now, let's say white moves, and the kings start traveling closer to each other, then white will have the opposition. White will move to b2, black king to g7, white to c3, black king to f6, white to d4, and now let's say black moves to e6, white moves to e4, and then that's opposition. Now here, the reason why there's pawns there is because I want to show you guys like actually moving the kings for this opposition. Now this is neither distant opposition nor is it diagonal opposition. Basically, I like to call this the box opposition, and that might get a bit confusing. So let me show you. Basically, the rule for this opposition is that you gotta move it. You gotta move your king to a square where the box formed by the kings are all the corners of the box formed by the kings are all the same color. So right now, the corners of this box of the king is b2, b8. Wait, let me take that back. It's b1, b8, f1, and f8. Those are the box corners right now. And notice that they're not all the same color. The bottom two on the first rank, they're light colored. All the ones on the 8th rank are dark colored. Now basically, anyone who moves when it's like this will have the opposition. Anyone who moves when the boxes are different colors, they have the opposition. Likewise, if someone moves when the boxes are the same color, they do not have the opposition. So let's see. Let's see if I'm telling the truth right now. White would want to move his king to a square where all the square colors of the box corners are the same color. So right now, B2 is dark square, F2 is dark square, B8 is dark square, and F8 is dark square. Now, let's close in the box, and to close in the box, let's do this. We could also move up here as well, but let's do this. Now, white, he wants to go to a square where the squares are the same color. Now, you might be thinking, okay, king b3, but no, because b8 is dark squared, and so is e3. So this is the only move that works. If you want to get closer to the king, of course you could also do this, but at a2, but like that's not getting closer to the king. So if we do this, then all the corners are light squared. Now black king, maybe he wants to get closer to white king. All right, different color squares. Now white is maintaining this color, all dark squares now. Now, black maybe wants to move here, alright? And you kind of see where this is going. Now, white can jump up to d4 and just grab the opposition. Now, here, black does not have the opposition. So that's like a strange way of thinking of opposition. Like box opposition. That's what I like to call it. Now here, you might have seen this example in one of my other videos. So basically, black and white, their kings are both in opposition. It's white to move. Now, if it's white to move, let's say this was his only move. Black would jump up to a d5, and again, its opposition, white would have to jump down again, and then black could just eat all of white's pawns. So now, this is where you want to be smart about it and actually save some pawn moves. If this pawn was not here, like it was out of the board, or if it was on this square, then white would be in trouble. But this pawn was on h3. It wasn't on h4, h3. So now white could use this pawn move and take advantage of the opposition. And now black is the one that has to move back. And then white could easily just go for either side of the board. Maybe he would want to go here. So that's you gotta save your pawn move. It's called a saving pawn move. That kind of explains it. Now here, this also uses opposition. This is called triangulation. Yes. So triangulation is basically when it's like this, right? But now it's white to move in this scenario. If it was black to move, then black moving to e5 would be a pretty bad idea. If black moved his king to e5, it would be a bad idea since white would jump up and gain the opposition, and at the same time, black will have to move back, and then white will jump up again to gain the e4 pawn. So black to move loses. Does white to move loses for white? The answer is no. In this scenario, white wins in all lines. Black to move, white wins. White to move, let's see how he wins. So, instead of moving his king up to e3, because moving his king up to e3 would mean black will be able to move his king to e5, and white will lose the opposition. He will have to step back, and then black will be able to take all of white's pawns. So e3 is not an option. And obviously he can't go to other third rank squares because the pawn is there. So now white wants to take either the distant opposition or the box opposition. Notice that the distant opposition, he basically has 3 squares for black to move, and he has the distant opposition. And white, he takes the box opposition if he moves here, since all of the box quarter colors are the same. So let's go with the box opposition. Alright. Now, black has 2 ways to go from here. One is a very smart way, but it still loses. The other one is a bit noticeable way, but it also loses. So the more noticeable way, more noticeable move, is perhaps the only move, if you were to think about it, this one. If black steps back, then white would just jump up to e3 and take the black pawn. So black moves up, let's say. Now, the reason why white didn't move up before was that he was going to lose the opposition. Now black is there, so now white could just jump up, and now he has the opposition. Black has to retreat, and then of course white takes a pawn, and it's basically game over for black, because now black has to move back again, and yeah, it's just not very pleasant. White is up a pawn. Now, this is the final example. Same board as last time, but I'm going to show you the trickier way for black to proceed. So, again, taking the box opposition for white. But now, instead of moving his king up to e5, if he's smart, he'll move his pawn up. Now, if you're white, you should not be tempted by this pawn take. So, like, you shouldn't take the pawn. The reason why black did this was so that if you take, then black will be able to move up to e5, and he'll gain the opposition. And then once you move back as white, then black will be able to take all of your pawns. So, do not fall for this trap if this ever happens to you. A pawn sacrifice seems pretty risky in the endgame, but in this case it works. So, instead of taking, you might want to move your king up to f3, or blockading the pawn to e2. Now, black, if he moves up, alright, same thing. White grabs the opposition and black loses. So, white wins in all variations, all lines. And that will be it for today's video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it and learned a lot about opposition. Perhaps one of the most difficult topics to understand and learn. So, if you guys enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe, and click that notifications bell to see more chess tips.